to the Moms on Maternity YouTube show and podcast. I'm Aimee Cruz, and today we have on Liz Maritz. She is the author of a new book called BrodyMonster, all about kind of mental health as a mom and dog owner, and has a really interesting story from leaving a big-time role in corporate America to a stay-at-home mom to an author and continuing her journey as an author. So thanks for joining us, Liz.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So when did you decide it was time to leave corporate management?
I actually really enjoyed working in a corporate setting, so it was a tough decision. It was after I started writing this book, actually, okay. And I was actually a year and a half into writing the book, and I went back to work after maternity leave. And I was kind of in the final stages of battling postpartum anxiety. And I would come home every night and just cry, like bathing my daughter, I would just cry. And I, ultimately decided that this would be a small blip on the radar of life. And in 2017, almost exactly 4 years ago, I decided to leave corporate America.
So your daughter was 1.5 or 1?
She was just 7 months old.
She was how old? 7 months?
She was 7 months old. Yes. So I had gotten an extended maternity leave. My company was being extremely understanding and gracious. I went back for, I think, 8 weeks, and then I decided that I was gonna stay home for a while.
And so you were already writing the book then when did you start writing the book? Was it before you were pregnant or while you were pregnant?
Yes. So this book is a perfect example of projects morphing as you go through life experiences. I started writing this book as it was going to be like a funny book about all of Brody's medical mishaps. I started writing it in 2015. I was not even pregnant yet. I was not planning on it being about anxiety or mental health or anything like that, but it evolved as I was writing it.
That is funny. So tell us about Brody.
So Brody is a wire-haired fox-terrier, and for anyone who's familiar with dogs, they know that terriers are kind of the troublesome breeds. I say that in a very affectionate way, but they're the breeds for people who want a challenge. And Brody, he came from at least his dad was a fairly well-known dog in the show circuit. So he had some like show dog potential, and I was interested in potentially showing him. And shortly after bringing him home, we realized he could not be a show dog, but he's fun. He keeps us on our toes. And yeah, I'm probably like 15 to 20 pounds lighter because I own him. So.
So how did he inspire the kind of journey through is it your mental health or mental health more broadly?
Yeah, it's, he inspired my health journey because I was bound and determined to help him through his health journey. So he experienced in the book a number of different things, from more behavioral issues, which kind of stem from some gut health issues, which anyone who's like, familiar with your microbiome, he was having trouble digesting his food and managing anxiety. So after dealing with that for a few years, I realized I might have kind of a similar challenge going on with my own health. And I think as we're learning more and more, as we hear more about medicine and just overall holistic health, we're realizing that mental health and physical health kind of go hand in hand. And so not only did I use some of the same techniques that we use with Brody to improve his health, but I use them to improve my own health as well. So just changing my diet, being mindful of when I'm eating, and there's a ton of gained knowledge from going through that experience with him that I used for myself.
That's awesome. What do you think had a bigger impact, your actual change in your diet or being more mindful of kind of the frequency and portions? Or all of that?
That's a good question. I mean, I think one without the other, when you pair the two together, they're exponentially more impactful to your health. So I think it's been more of a layering kind of effect. So I started out changing Brody from a diet where he had some grain in his food to a grain-free diet. And I know that that can be controversial in the pet industry, but I also think based on what we were dealing with his anxiety and some of his allergies, he was having, really, really bad skin allergies. And in dogs, those can be those are usually related to digestion. So it started off with the layering of like, we changed diet, he changed his diet. I was like, oh, maybe I should, look at reducing gluten, grain in my own diet. And then that didn't immediately have the desired impact. So we took Brody, this was just kind of recently, we took Brody down to like one meal a day. So he kind of does like intermittent fasting. He has like 23 hours between feeds.
Yeah.
So we took him down to one meal a day, and that gives his system, so he eats more food than he did at his
you do that
morning
yourself?
meal. I do. Yeah. I do intermittent fasting. So
How often?
So this was one where I actually started and then applied it to Brody. I work out like usually 4 to 5 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
And on the days that I don't work out immediately in the morning, I will I'll do a fast through the morning. And so I'll just reduce the window of time in which I eat in a 24-hour period. On days where I don't have a workout, I just try to go as long as I can with just juice, like juicing, like celery juice, not like orange juice. Greens juice.
I need to do this.
Yeah, bone broth.
I like basically eat all day. I snack way too much. That sounds
yeah, it's tough, especially with kids, because my kids always want to snack, and I'm like, here's some pretzels.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll have a few.
Oh my gosh, right? Totally.
Yeah.
So the book, when did it actually finish?
So the published book came out April of this year, so just a month ago.
And tell us again what the book's about, and who's the intended reader?
Oh gosh. So I think the reader that would get the most out of it or could relate to it the most is probably someone who has had children, who has gone through some of those maternal challenges. I think it's also great for someone who's expecting a baby and possibly has a dog in their house. So it's a story that really for anyone that has had a dog or has had a child or is expecting a child will get something out of. But if you've already been through that experience, it's very, very relatable.
When you said there's some pretty awesome tips in there for how to handle having a barking dog and a sleeping baby, what were some of them? If you don't mind?
Okay, well, so the tips are not actually in the book.
Okay.
Because it's more of a narrative, but there's a moment in the book, it's kind of where I realized that I had something going on with me mentally, where it was like the mailman rings the doorbell and he woke up, Brody's barking woke up my daughter that I had just gotten to go to sleep, and she wasn't feeding well. And so I have all kinds of dog proofing tips for anyone that has a new baby in the house, and they make doorbell covers, and I have a sign out that I just leave out all the time. You can do a ton of different stuff. Brody is actually on a schedule now, and I think a lot of people do think about putting, you think about when you have a newborn, you're like, oh, they're on a schedule, they're on the eat, awake, sleep, cycle. Brody was actually kind of on that cycle with my second with us. So we were very careful to stick to the schedule, and Brody kind of knew when we were gonna be quiet and when we were going to.
You got him to know not to bark at certain times.
Yeah, so I would crate him. When the baby was sleeping and put a towel over his crate. So Brody, this is going to be different for every dog. So you kind of, it's hard to say, these are things you can try. They might not work for your dog, but Brody has a very, very intact den instinct. He loves his crate.
Mm-hmm.
So the crate isn't a punishment for him. It's kind of a
Right.
reward.
Where does he
And
sleep at night?
he sleeps in his crate.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, he's crated.
Yeah.
And we actually don't even shut the door anymore.
Wow, that's
He just goes in there at like 8:30. He's like, I'm done, guys. Like, have a nice evening.
So let's talk a little bit more like that aha moment you had where like it's just like the doorbell rings, just got baby down, dog's barking, like, and you're like, okay, I have a problem. Like what, like what did you how does that moment like make you realize I have a mental problem I need to heal or overcome? And how do you feel like you've been able to heal it and overcome it? Like what's the journey most, if someone has a similar moment in their life or like, whoa, like something's maybe wrong with me, like how do you get through that?
Yeah, I mean, it's not an easy thing for, I think, a lot of moms to talk about, but we've all snapped, right? Like we've all screamed, we've all screamed, we've all said something and then like looked out the window to see if the neighbors heard that. Um, so this was like one of those moments. The doorbell rang. He woke up my daughter, and I literally like mad charged toward, and this is a dog that I love dearly, like with all my heart. I mad charged toward him and threw him about 7 feet across the room. I'm not kidding. It was one of those moments where you know something's wrong with you, because nothing deserves that kind of reaction. And he didn't come near me for 3 days after that happened.
Thanks for sharing that. That's really honest.
Yeah.
I know.
I think we've all had those moments, and
no, definitely.
You need to hear that from other moms.
So,
we mess up.
How'd you go from, what happened from there? How did you get through thinking through like, whoa, what's wrong with me? Or like,
it took a long time. So right after that happened, I sat down on the couch. My daughter was like crying in her mama-roo, and Brody was like hovering, watching me, but like really far away from me. And I just kind of sat there, and I like from across the room, I was just like, I'm sorry, buddy, I'm sorry. And it took him 3 days to come near me again. But just like you would do with your children. And, once he came near me again, I just kind of sat down with him, and I think he knew I was sorry. And I think he knew that I was taking ownership for it. And I know that sounds crazy, but, dogs do pick up on our emotions, and he forgave me, I think.
Unconditional love.
Yes. And then, that was a great lesson for me. I'm fortunate that I had that kind of reaction with Brody and not with one of my children.
Yeah.
And it was a great lesson for me on like controlling my emotions and my physical reaction. And, I can't say that I haven't lashed out or yelled since then, but you kind of have this roadmap for how to handle that when it does happen.
What is the roadmap?
So I'm still working on mine.
Yeah.
It gets better every time. Like it's not to the point where I could say like, this is it. This is definitely what works. But I do find that just kind of inhaling, counting to 10, all those things that we're told to do, but don't, in the heat of the moment. I think you get better at it with practice. And hopefully you don't have to practice it that much, but you do get better with practice.
And does your book kind of go into that? Is that what the book kind of talks about? Some of this stuff, or no? It's more.
The book is more, the book is actually more pre-child. It's more, and this is why I say anyone that's expecting a baby, it's a really valuable book for them, because I don't want to say that I came from a family that kind of ignored mental illness. Mental illness is in my family history. So it's something that I should have been more in tune to. And I clearly had signs in the course of sort of bringing up Brody, if you will. I clearly had signs of anxiety. So the whole book kind of outlines all of the medical experiences that we have with Brody, my reaction to those. And I think anyone could look at it in hindsight and say, oh my goodness, this girl is just a basket case of anxiety. Like, why isn't she getting help? Why isn't she seeing a therapist or a counselor? It never dawned on me until that moment that I described with, Brody in the room. And I think it's a valuable story for someone who is, looking to start a family, because they can see some of those signs
Oh
and
my
they
gosh,
can be
I
more
think
aware of
that is
them.
so well said, because that truly is the time in your life where I feel like your anxiety is heightened. Really great point on that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think if you can identify that before the baby comes, you can have your plan of, you can have your
Mhm.
plan all set in place. You can have a therapist on call, and you can let your OBGYN or your midwife know, like, this could be a thing. So just help me watch for it.
Yeah. Okay, so you are now, this is your first book, right?
Yes.
Okay, are you working on another one? I mean, you just published it last month, finished with the press?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so you're probably not already working on another book, right? You
Well,
are.
I think a lot of authors are always working on multiple books at the same time, but they're all in your head. So I do have a book idea for my next book, and I'm kind of keeping my eyes open for, opportunities to develop that. But I probably will not start actually writing the book until about this time next year.
Cool. What really loved I went to your website, beautiful site, and just right off the bat, this I tell honesties and this idea of kind of being vulnerable in is really powerful. So tell us about what what you mean by that. And do you feel like that is what is going on with other authors? Like, is what we're reading out there really just human based successes?
Um, so I can't speak as much to the author community, because I haven't been a part of that community for a terribly long time. But I do have a journalism background, and so I have like formal training in journalism. I went to the University of Missouri School of Journalism, and I can say that I read a lot. I read a lot of news, um, and it leaves me with a lot of questions. And I feel like um, there are a lot of holes left for readers to misinterpret or interpret things their own way in the news. And that's why I actually chose authorship as my medium of writing versus shorter form journalism or even investigative journalism. I respect those fields a lot. I think it's really, really hard. I think those journalists have a hard job to do in covering the issues that they're covering in 500, 1,000, 1,500 words. And
And a deadline, I'm sure.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
and
honesty, I think, comes with context. And I think in order to provide a lot of context, you need a longer form medium. And so that's kind of where that came from.
so wow, God, that was so well said. I want to like unpack that. So you read a lot of news. What do you read? Which sites or what that's
All over. So I try to get news from various different sources with various political leanings. So New York Times, the Wall Street Journal. I read local news sources. We actually have some great kind of neighborhood publications here in St. Louis that I love. So we have like the West End Journal, which is kind of delivered to my house. So I try to cover all geographic regions, all political affiliations. I also love NPR. Like NPR is my favorite.
and you said you thought there was an element of honesty missing from what you read. Is that true?
I think so. You know how they say, like it's more omission. So it's
Omission.
hard. It's more the omissions that occur when you only have a short amount of space to tell the story. And so then you have to pick the really important pieces of that story. And then journalism's a business too. So you have to pick the pieces of the story that are going to make readers want to click on that link or read that page. And books are a little bit different. I think you can tell a more complete story with a book, even if it's fiction. I think you can dive into political issues and cultural issues with a book. So I'm not really saying that journalists are intentionally dishonest.
Yeah. Was it hard to write? How many pages is the book?
The book is just a little over 200 pages.
And it took you 5 years to finish to really get it. I mean,
Yes.
Is that something, do you feel like your next book would take that long? I mean, is writing a book really hard? Because it sounds really hard.
So I was really concerned when I was nearing the end of the process on this book, that the next books would take me that long. And as I listened to other author interviews on podcasts and stuff like that, a lot of I specifically sought out like young women authors who had written multiple books. Like they're on book number 10, and
amazing.
Everybody said their first book took them 5 or 6 years because they had little kids and they were transitioning out of the workforce and they were trying to make this a viable career. So my intention is not to ever take this long to write a book again, but I allowed myself that time because there's a huge learning curve. There's a huge learning curve.
And then the honest part of BrodyMonster, like what is the kind of the honest part is just because it's a narrative around your journey with Brody's health issues. That's where you come up with your kind of honest
take
on it.
To dive into some of the specifics of the book, I think it comes out a little bit more if you read it. The honest part is that I think I get to this point where with Brody, I felt there's this theme of we have a cultural propensity to kind of treat our dogs as humans, and this has changed a lot over the last 50 years. And the overarching theme is we can have a really healthy, really appropriate relationship with our dogs, but as mothers, we also have to give ourselves the grace of knowing like they're dogs and they don't require all of the things that we give our children. So I think the honest part is saying like, yes, this dog is an important part of my life. We've helped each other through some really difficult times. But at the end of the day, I give myself permission to realize that he is a dog, and I crate him and I train him and I treat him with herd mentality. We're dealing with
Did you not crate him until after you had your baby?
What's that?
Is the crating a new thing because you had the baby? Like, were you not crating before that?
Creating the book or
crating?
Oh, crating. No, we always crated him.
Okay.
And that was because I had a dog growing up that was not crated, and at the end of his life, we had to crate him, and I honestly think he was just destroyed by that. So I was like, I just want this to be his room. We'll make it comfy. So, but I mean,
how old is Brody right now?
Brody is 8.5 years old, and he acts like he is a year old. I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old.
And do they get along with him?
So our 4-year-old, she's a lot more comfortable with him than our 2-year-old is.
No.
But our 2-year-old gets along with him. They have a pact. Brody gets to eat the food out of James's hand, and James gives it to him, and he gets the pleasure of like getting to like let Brody lick his hand. So they get along really well at mealtime.
Do you miss anything about corporate America?
That's a question I've tried not to think about a lot. So I do. I got a lot of I felt a lot of personal worth from being in corporate America, and so it's been a journey for me to find that same magnitude of worth as a mother and someone who is not earning the income that I earned previously. But you know, at the end of the day, it's kind of like saying, do you miss that friend that just moved across town? I feel like it's still there. I can go, have lunch with it whenever I want. And I do feel like our culture is changing, that if I decided at any point in time I wanted to re-enter the workforce, I don't think we have the same challenges that, our mothers in previous generations have, where they weren't interested.
Incredibly well said.
Yeah.
Do you feel, writing is kind of by yourself to write. You're not around other people. What's your approach? Do you have a certain location you go to write in? Do you change your location?
For me, it's a lot less about the location. And so I have a project management background.
Okay.
And so it's a lot less about the location and it's more about the time block. So it's more of a temporal location. So I do best writing when I've got at least a 5 or 6 hour chunk of time. I know some authors say that they have a full-time job and they write between the hours of like 9 and 11 at night, and that would not work for me.
Wow, yeah, I'm not.
So yeah, so it's more about having that block.
When do you find your 5 to 6 hour blocks?
Well, it takes a lot of planning. So I'll have like childcare lined up, and we have a nanny that comes 2 days a week, and yeah, that's when I like go to the doctor and do my writing, and that's like, you know, errand running and writing.
Aw. Well, thank you so much. Where can people find you?
So I have a website. It's lizmaritz.com, LIZMARITZ. Yep, lizmaritz.com. And I'm on Instagram, at Liz Maritz. And I'm also on Facebook. Those are the best places to find me.
And spell your last name one more time.
MARITZ.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I just want to say, you know who you totally remind me of? What's the girl's name? The actress. She was like in the singing movies and in that movie with George Clooney.
Is it Anna Kendrick?
Yes. I'm like, you like,
I get that all the time.
You're like, I mean,
thank you. I think she's gorgeous.
She is gorgeous, but you totally remind me of her. It's so funny.
Oh my gosh, so funny. Yes,
yeah,
that
you
is
get
not
that
the
all the
first time
time,
I've heard
yeah?
that. I do get that. That's probably the 5th or 6th time I've heard that.
That's cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We'll go ahead and get this edited and published, and let's definitely stay in touch.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Aimee. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
For more, please visit www.momsofmaternity.com.